I am a bus driver. And I visited one of my students to learn about the rules he has to follow. Now I have to follow those rules to survive the night. Episode 1 Link 2 Link. Hello. It's me again. Some of you guys wanted to hear about Tommy's stories. So later today I went to go see him for an interview. My shift starts at 4:00 a.m. I am expected to finish my job in an hour. Being paid $200 per shift, this means that I have plenty of free time to do other things. During this free time, I drove to Ernest's house, which was right next to the bus yard. After knocking on the door, the elderly man opened it shortly after. "Hey George. What do you need?" "I want to hear Tommy's stories. He mentioned this morning that he could tell his stories sometime." Ernest paused for a moment. "I already delivered all the students to their houses. Tommy lives at house 17. Located at stop 4. I'll inform them that you're coming." "All right. Thank you. Where's my new bus, by the way?" "You can use mine until we get you a new one. It's bus 69. Ernest smirked because funny number. Despite his age, he is still a true man of culture. I got back into my truck and drove the 200 feet 60 meters to the yard and arrived at the gate. This time there was a woman in the guard shack. "Who are you?" "I am George," I interrupted. "Ernest told me I can use bus 69. "Okay. Wait a moment." She got on her phone for a moment to confirm with Ernest what I just said. "All right, sir. Here are your keys. Be safe." The gate opened and I did the swapping thing I did this morning. This time I was driving an International 3300 school bus, which was also dented and scratched from years of destroying demons and their vehicles. I have since learned that the bus I was driving this morning was a 4th generation Bluebird All-American. There was also a rule sheet in the bus, similar to the one on my original bus. The only differences were a small change to Rule 10 due to this bus having a different engine placement. And Rule 14 was added to the list. I went down Route 3 and turned onto Old Military Road. This time I knew the rules and had experience following them, so I was easily able to reach stop 4. Especially considering the fact I was going the other way so I could get to stop 4 more quickly. The mansion was still between stops 4 and 5. But there was a problem. It was daytime. I couldn't hide in the darkness anymore. Luckily, I found my old bus on the opposite side of the road. I don't know the rules for passing the mansion during the daytime yet, but I was able to hide behind the bus as I passed. Considering the fact Ernest let me drive on the road, there's probably a different rule for the daytime. I later found a 1980s pickup truck in the left lane going the opposite direction. I avoided eye contact with the creature inside as I swerved into the left lane and caused a head-on collision. My bus easily overpowered the truck, and the sudden switch of direction threw the driver's head into the airbagless steering wheel. Its eyes no longer emitted light after this, so I assumed it died. I arrived at stop 4. Nobody who lived here owned any vehicles for obvious reasons, so there was no designated place to park them. My solution was to drive onto the grass and park next to house 17. Now, in retrospect, driving onto a mutual friend's property without their permission was probably a bad idea. But luckily, they didn't care. Tommy's house looked like it was built in the late 1800s. All of the other houses did. The houses were in an elongated semicircle shape around the edge of the clearing. The semicircle was stretched along the road's axis, making all of the house face some part of the road. I knocked on the door of house 17, and a middle-aged man answered the door. "Hello, George. We've been expecting you." I was invited into the house and sat down on a couch in the living room. The man called Tommy and he rushed downstairs to see me, and we gathered in the living room. The family introduced themselves to me and I introduced myself to them. They consisted of this: Tommy Williams, Heather Johnson, Tommy's mother, Jeffrey Williams, Tommy's father, Tony Williams, Jeffrey's father, Jessica Williams, Jeffrey's mother, Henry Johnson, Heather's father. Mary Johnson. Heather's mother. Harry Williams. Jeffrey's younger brother. Richard Dennis. Harry's husband. While we introduced ourselves, Tommy went to the kitchen and returned with the rules sheet. Rules for living at 17 Old Military Road. 1. Do not trust the windows. If you see something unusual and/or dangerous outside, for example something on fire, open the window to check if it is real. 2. If you see a tree climb out of its spot, stay inside until it settles its roots in a different location. When this happens, the tree still cannot see or hear, but it can feel vibrations and has a sense of touch. Any organic objects the tree can find during this will be used as fertilizer for it. 3. If a steel door appears somewhere it shouldn't be, do not under any circumstances open it. It should disappear shortly after. To avoid confusion, do not have any normal doors made of metal, for the basement doesn't exist. Don't enter it. 5. Sometimes the mailman will show up and drop off a package on your doorstep. If this happens, do not under any circumstances open it. Instead, call the bomb squad to deal with it. They know the rules of the road. Do not interact with the mailman. We have no idea where this man comes from. Anything you order online should be shipped to our school too. Avoid confusion. This never happens at the same time as Rule 2 and/or Rule 8, because the creature and the trees will attack the mailman. 6. If you hear something scurrying behind the walls, shut off the main breaker. If you don't, it'll ground the wires and may cause an electrical fire. 7. Shut off any bright lights that can be seen from outside by dusk and do not turn them back on until dawn. You can still have small night lights or use electronic devices with screens during this time. This rule does not apply in rooms without windows. 8. A huge black creature may roam the nearby area on all fours during the night. Do not make it aware of your presence. This is why Rule 7 exists. 9. If you see a mansion in the distance that was not there before, alert us. This is important for those who drive on the road. Is Fred the Rule 8 creature? I asked Tommy. I remember him mentioning Fred's existence once. Yup. We've given him a name. He usually shows up at least once a week. Only at night. Even if he isn't there. It's very risky to exit the house during this time because he can show up at any time during the night. Even with the risk of being blown up by a terrorist mailman, being killed by a giant demonic creature, being eaten by a tree, and getting the house burned down by a rodent in the walls, I still did really enjoy my time there. Living here wouldn't be as bad as it sounds as long as you follow the rules. As we chatted, I encountered Rule 2 multiple times. The trees will rip their roots out of the ground and climb out of its spot using them. They would then use their branches to walk like they were using crutches. It would pause after every few steps, allowing the roots to do what I assume was testing the soil. Once it found a place it liked, it would pull its roots to its trunk like they were legs going into the fetal position, and thrust them into the ground. Once the tree was settled, it would become dormant and stay that way until it decides to move again. Tommy's family and I talked for hours. I learned the following from our conversation. Tommy's paternal grandfather was close friends with one of Ernest's grandsons in the late 50s. They were both in high school at the time. Ernest was born on November 9, 1914, making him 106 years old. This truly shocked me as he looked like he was in his 80s. And was in incredibly good health despite his age. Ernest's wife is 94, making her 12 years younger than him. This wouldn't seem very unusual until you learn she was 16 when they got married. They both have since learned how ducked up this was. But they did love each other and decided to stay together. The Rule 3 door appears only when nobody's looking at it. How or if this doesn't create matter is unknown. Rule 9 was added shortly after the mansion was discovered, being suggested by Tommy's father in 1984 when he attended this school. All of the rules for anything in this region were discovered by trial and error, written to protect others. As long as you follow the rules, living here is very easy. This explains why the school is still in operation. And people live here. The local government is aware of that's going on. But they don't shut down the region due to what I said above. The federal government is unaware of the strange activity in this area. The incident yesterday was only covered up for an investigation. I have since been allowed to share what I saw. We eventually realized how much time had passed when the lights turned off automatically. The family intentionally made the lights turn off at 7:00 p.m. so they don't have to worry about Rule 7. We saw that it was becoming dark outside. Soon, the only light will come from the lamps in the center of the group of houses. And the lights inside the mansion, which was still visible from nearly a mile 1.5 kilometers away. We all knew I was stuck here for tonight. I am excited to see how your night went. Think part 2 might be out tomorrow actually. Great. Are you ever going to try going to the basement? Or is there a story behind that rule? There doesn't seem to be any way to get to the basement that I know of. I think a path would appear somewhere that leads to the basement. Similar to Rule 3. Probably. Maybe the seniors of the family know what happens. The rules just get crazier. Did they talk about the mansion at all? The man mentioned an auction item when they fought with you near the parking lot. So the mansion might be some kind of criminal supernatural auction for paranormal items or something like that. I am really curious about it. What bothers me is the hostility. I don't know much about the auction hall. But I know the address the Marauder was registered at. So I may investigate that later when I have the time to drive to Maine. Sounds like an idea. Might want to be careful though. If that wall of bricks is made of the same kind of brick the mansion is made of, it's definitely something shady. Be careful, OP. The name Red Moth makes sense now. They see light. They go after. But that kind of violence definitely makes me think about some mafia auction. I am not entirely sure how a brick wall is going to harm me, but considering what I've seen so far, there's definitely something going on over there. I've been sent a picture by a local who lives nearby, and it's literally just a brick wall in the center of a flat slab of dirt that you'd expect to belong to a farmer. Not only did they kill several police officers and lose 10 of their men in the battle, they also had a military vehicle ready for this. There's probably some sort of fraud going on as well, considering that the Marauder was registered at a random lot. Maybe for passing the background check involved with purchasing that vehicle. And yes, the police are very suspicious of this, and there is now a warrant for Alfred's arrest for questioning. Even with all the information the government knows about this man, he apparently went missing and was presumed dead until now. I am a bus driver, and I visited one of my students to learn about the rules he has to follow. Now I have to follow those rules to survive the night. Part 2 finale. Part 1 link 3. I texted Ernest to inform him that someone else was going to have to take the shift tonight. After I did this, I asked the family a question. Well, now what? Do you have a guest bedroom of something? Yes. Actually, replied Jeffrey. We had an extra bedroom we don't need. So we turned it into a guest bedroom so we'd be prepared if this exact situation happens. So, do we go there now? Probably. Hey Tommy. Can you introduce George to his new room? Tommy left his room and came to the staircase. Yes, I can do that. Come. We went upstairs to find another hallway. Tommy's room was facing the staircase like it was an extension of the staircase. To the left of it was my room, with a small open area in front of it. The wall ended with a corner after my room, and on that wall were 4 doors, which were all bedrooms for the grandparents, the parents, and the uncles. My room was a small room, about 10 multiply 10 multiply 10 feet 3 meters. On the opposite side of the wall with the door was a window. 2 beds were next to the right and left wall, with the headboards of each being on the wall with the window. While Tommy gave me a tour of the room, I was distracted by movement I sensed in my peripheral vision. Accompanying whatever was out there was a quiet, barely audible thump every few seconds. The moment I looked out that window, I knew exactly what was out. There. Rule 8: a huge black creature may roam the nearby area on all fours during the night. Do not make it aware of your presence. This is why Rule 7 exists. I immediately moved away from the window so Fred didn't see me. The window only manipulates light, not sound, Tommy informed me. So Fred is definitely out there. Okay then. Good night. I guess. Actually, I'm going to go to school soon. My point still stands. Tommy paused to process what I just said. Okay then. Also, try to close the blinds when he's not looking in your direction. Thanks. I'll do that soon. Tommy left and returned to his room. While I was in my bedroom browsing Reddit, I heard a strange noise from downstairs. It sounded like tiny shards of metal colliding with each other. Like the metal shards in one of those The Real Cost anti-vape ads. This sound only lasted for a few seconds, ending well before I went downstairs to investigate. I had no idea what was making this noise, but I assumed it was harmless. When I went downstairs, I found nothing unusual in the living room. But when I entered the kitchen, I found a gray metal door that wasn't there before. The door was on a blank wall, and the black metal frame protruded from the wall instead of being embedded into it like any normal door. Rule 3: if a steel door appears somewhere it shouldn't be, do not under any circumstances open it. It should disappear shortly after. To avoid confusion, do have any normal doors made of metal. I knew this was a horrible idea, but something came over me. I wanted to open that door so badly. Grandpa Tony walked into the kitchen and saw me staring at the door. Don't, he said calmly. I was startled by his sudden appearance behind me. This knocked me out of whatever the door was doing to my mind. Go to bed. It'll be gone by the morning, he ordered. Sorry, I muttered and returned to my bedroom. I browsed Reddit for a few more minutes before I decided to go to sleep. But the scurrying of something nearby kept me up. Then I remembered Rule 6. Rule 6: if you hear something moving behind the walls, shut off the main breaker. If you don't, it'll ground the wires and may cause an electrical fire. Shit. I immediately got out of my bed and rushed into the hall. Rule 6, I shouted. This woke everyone in the house. Where is the breaker? Hold on. I'll get it, Tony replied from downstairs as he rushed to the breaker. But before he could shut off the power, the thing in the walls did. I heard a loud bang near my room. I went to investigate, knowing what just happened. But my room was full of dust in the air. When the lights came back on, I found a vague circle of charred plaster on the right wall that was not there earlier. The circle was about 18 inches 0.5 meters in diameter. Guys, I called out. Mary, Henry, Jessica, and Jeffrey came into the room. Heather, her son, and her brothers-in-law were chatting about something in the hallway. But I was too focused on what I was doing to eavesdrop on their conversation. That I said, pointing at the burned chunk of the wall. God damn it. We'll have to fix that tomorrow. No electricity until then, Grandma Mary instructed. Jeffrey returned to the hallway. Dad, turn off the breaker, he shouted to his father, who was still downstairs. On it, he replied. Seconds later, the lights turned off again. We all returned to our rooms and I went to sleep. I woke up the next morning. I checked my phone to discover it was 7:53 a.m. Fred couldn't prevent me from leaving the house anymore. I was about to go downstairs and go home, but something stopped me. Something was different about the room. It took me a moment to notice that the old wooden door was no longer there. It was now replaced by a gray steel door. The black metal door frame protruded from the wall, just like the one in the kitchen, as if this new door was on top of the old one. Surely this would be fine to open. Right. I know what is on the other side of this wall. But knowing what was on the other side of that wall was irrelevant to where this door would take me. I opened the door. expecting the other door to be behind it. But instead found a ravine. It was like I just entered a Monsters Incorporated door. On the other side of the door was a ledge that was about 10 feet 3 meters wide, and went an unknown distance to my left and right. I immediately closed the door, not wanting to be the cat killed by curiosity. I stared at the door that somehow bent spacetime to connect the bedroom to whatever this was. I really wanted to open that door, but I managed to resist the urge. Eventually, the door and the frame turned to dust like it was Thanos snapped. As soon as the frame of the door was no longer one piece, the connection to the ravine closed and caused a mini earthquake. Behind the portal was the original door. I went downstairs to find most of the family in the open space that consists of the living room, dining room, and the kitchen. Jeffrey, Harry, their parents, and Richard were eating breakfast at the dining table. I explained to them what just happened in my room. The moment I mentioned that I opened the door, I was interrupted by Grandma Jessica freaking out. "You opened the door!" she screamed frantically. "Calm down. I didn't let anything in. It was only open for a few seconds." She sighed in relief. "Oh. Good. What happened the last time you opened the door?" Grandma Jessica paused as she recalled the events. I was oh God. Every other family member at the table stared at Grandma Jessica in confusion, then at me in disgust. "Out!" Grandpa Tony commanded. "Pack your shit and get out." Harry protested this order. "Jesus Christ, Dad. He was just asking a question. He didn't know about the trauma involved with that incident." Grandpa Tony paused for a moment. "Good point, son. Sorry about that. Ask Ernest. He knows what happened and wasn't traumatized by the event. Unlike us. None of us want to relive the..." He paused and started sobbing. "The memories." Harry hugged his father to comfort him. "Well, I'm leaving anyway. Goodbye." "Goodbye, George. It was nice meeting you," said Richard. "Stay away from the forest on your way out. Fred hides in the shade during the day. He usually retreats at around 4:00 a.m. "All right. Got it." I got back into my bus and was about to leave, but I noticed something. Fred was still there, hiding under the trees, watching me, waiting for me to enter the shadows. His blue light emitting eyes stared at mine. I moved my bus to shine my high beams on him. I caught a better glimpse of him before he got out of the way. The creature was at least 10 feet 3 meters tall while on all fours. It had the body structure of a Ravager from Minecraft, but its torso was the same width as the legs, that being about a foot 30 centimeters. Its lower jaw resembled that of a T-Rex, and its head was shaped like a baseball cap with its eyes on the front of the round part looking directly ahead, and the flat part being the upper jaw. Its neck extended at least a few feet, dozens of centimeters from the shoulders. Once I got on the road, Fred was no longer visible in the forest. I decided to drive the long way home to avoid the mansion. Somewhere between stops 3 and 2, I heard the church bell ahead of me. Slightly to my right. Rule 8: if you hear a church bell, avoid going towards the source. If it's behind you, you're good. If it's on your side or in front of you, turn around and get as far away as you can until the ringing stops. Once you can no longer hear the bell, you can turn around and continue your journey. This usually doesn't last long. Guess I'm leaving the other way then. As I went in the direction I came from, I encountered Rule 9. But I was already prepared to deal with it. Now that I've seen Fred, the Rule 9 creature looks like a miniature version of him. When I returned my bus, I went to Ernest's house. I knocked on the door, and after looking out a nearby window to see who was outside, he came and opened the door. "So, how was it?" he asked. I ignored his question. "So Tony told me to ask you about the incident involving the Rule 3 door." Ernest paused. "Come in. I've got a story to tell ya. This is what I learned doing Story time. Jeffrey and Harry are the only remaining offspring of their parents. But this was not always the case. When Tony, Jessica, and their kids moved into House 17 in 1968, they encountered the door shortly after. They opened it, saw the ravine, and immediately closed it. Just like I did. They reported this to Ernest, and that's when Rule 3 was added. In 1972, Jeffrey Williams, who was 8 at the time, rebelled against his parents and opened the steel door. He had been always told throughout his childhood to not open the door, but was never told why. He ventured into the ravine with Samuel and Samantha Williams, his 4-year-old twin siblings, both being the opposite sex of each other. Harry was still an infant at the time. After a few hours of exploring, they got bored and returned to the door. But they could barely open it a crack, enough to confirm there was now a stone wall behind the door. The connection to the house had already been severed by then. The twins decided to instead find another way out as the door no longer worked. Jeffrey stayed and was tasked to test the door regularly. Naturally, their parents were freaking the duck out because their kids went missing. When the door reappeared, they opened it and found Jeffrey next to it. The parents took Jeffrey back inside, and Tony went to look for his other kids while Jessica stayed behind to monitor the door and make sure Jeffrey doesn't do any other stupid things. Jeffrey only knows what direction each twin went in. Every time the door reappeared, which was usually at least once a day, she would open it until it disappeared, shouting Tony's name occasionally. Nearly 2 months later, Tony replied to Jessica's call. Tony followed her voice to find the door. He would call Jessica again whenever he needed to confirm he was going the right direction. When Tony found the door, he claimed to have only been in there for a few hours. And unless he found food in there. This was definitely an accurate statement. After this incident, Rule 3 was changed to further forbid opening that door. Nobody ever opened it again. Until now. I think I know where I'm going next. OP, are you sure you want to go through that door? Doesn't sound very safe. Considering how that ravine manipulates time. The twins might still be alive in there. True. Wonder if your phone works in there. It should work. But I probably won't get any signal if the connection is severed. You should use a rope when going in. Leave on end tied to something back home. Though it might get severed with the door. I can tie it to the doorknob of the other door. You are a good guy for wanting to save the twins. But be careful, dude. I will. I am going to do some planning with the group on how we're going to do this. We're all probably going to go in and stick together.